I urge you and implore you to go to youtube.com/Will Noonan and watch the Noonan Show clip playlist. Paul is so dutifully put together. And once again, in front of me, hundreds of people hit their brakes for absolutely no reason. Fucking cunts.
You're listening to Hypothetically with Will Noonan.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is where you are. Thank you for listening to Hypothetically with Will Noonan. That's me, coming at you live right now from Fall River, Massachusetts. Beautiful Fall River, Mass. One of the stranger towns in Mass, I'd say. It's just a little different. Kind of doesn't remind... It's very Rhode Island. It's a Rhode Island city here in Massachusetts. But anyway, just did a gig. It was pretty fun. It was an interesting-ass gig. I'm laughing because there was... I don't know, a somewhat politically incorrect joke was made between two comedians that I found quite humorous and continue to. So I guess I'll explain what that bit was, or what that joke was. So Steve Donovan was on the show tonight, who I haven't seen in a really long time. Very, very funny guy. Used to play softball together. He's a radio personality out of Providence. Used to do a lot more stand-up, but funny-ass motherfucker. I hadn't seen him in a long time. We were on the show together. He was on before I was on. He goes on, he comes off. The host is on there. Joe Holden, who's kind of like a headliner-y host. He's one of those hosts who does a lot of time up front and then a lot of time in between comics, so it's not like your typical hosting type thing. And it was a different type of gig. There was several people in the audience with mental handicaps. It's a social club for all types of people, and they do not discriminate against mentally handicapped people. So once a couple join, word gets out to the mentally handicapped hangouts where they hang out and go to classes and stuff, and then a few more people join. So I understand it. So it's just a standard kind of Elks Club type gig, but with a smattering more mentally handicapped people than you would normally have. So as I was waiting to go on, and the comedian Steve Donovan had just come off, we're sitting there by this table full of hors d'oeuvres and other type snacks, and I'd eaten a shitload of cookies and cupcakes. And I'm sitting there, but I'm just waiting to hear my name so I can go on. And Steve's talking to me, and he's munching away in a cookie, and I'm looking around the crowd, and I'm like, oh, is that lady right there in the front row to the right? Does she have Down syndrome? Because here's the thing. She had light Down syndrome, and so visually it was like right on that line. You know, some people say Matt Damon is a couple chromosomes away from it. Sometimes you're just very close, you know. Not everyone looks the same, but you could tell something. I don't know. I thought I was seeing some Down syndrome, but I don't know. I'm not a fucking expert. And you just want to know these things sometimes when you're on stage, because you definitely do not want to think you're getting heckled by some drunk when you're just getting spoken to by a fucking, unfortunate, one of the unfortunate DNA lottery winners of life who has, a mental handicap, right? You don't want to fucking give anyone like that a hard time for giving you a hard time without knowing it. I think almost every comedian out there has a story about doing crowd work with someone in the crowd who and saying something to them, like, and finding out that, what are you, deaf? Yes. What are you, fucking blind? Yes. Oh shit. Yeah. Something wrong with you? Yes. Look at this guy, he's fucking hammered. Actually, I have cerebral palsy. All kinds of things. Every comedian almost has some kind of story like that. So the longer you do it, the more you can see the opportunity for stuff like that to happen, and the more you try and avoid it, if you can. So you just want to know where, sometimes if there's a lot of people like that in the crowd, you kind of want to know where they're sitting. or just so you don't, not everyone looks mentally handicapped too. Some people are, but they don't look like it. It's a whole fucking thing. So just trying to get the lay of the land a little bit. Wasn't necessarily trying to point her out or make fun of her or anything, but we are comedians, so I'm like, is that lady right there have Down syndrome? And he's like, yeah, she does. And I'm like, okay, just wanted to make sure we're fun when on stage. He's like, yeah, actually though, she's he goes, yeah, she's a great audience member. She laughed at everything. She didn't give me a hard time or anything like that. I go, yeah. And I go, yeah, she's great. She seems great. She made those cookies you're eating right now. That's what I said to Steven. Steve comically spit it out into the trash a second later, and we both were dying laughing. It was all a joke. He obviously, she didn't make them. Obviously, I was kidding. He knew I was kidding. It was all a joke. But he's such a comedian. As soon as I said, oh yeah, she made those cookies, he spit it into the trash can next to him. And we both started laughing, like really laughing. Like tears coming out of my eyes, kind of laughter. And then I can hear Joe start to go, all right, you guys, you ready for your next comic? This guy's funny. Sirius XM, probably starting. So I'm like, oh shit. So I went on stage, like really, actually, honest to God, I had a great set. And I was laughing and just in such a funny mood by the second, when I went up there. I had such a great time, and it was just a good moment, and it's fucking sucks that I've been brainwashed by society to feel even a little bit of guilt about having a laugh at someone with Down syndrome's expense, even though not really. I'm more having a laugh at Steve's unconscious and all of our unconscious prejudices in life. But I still thought it's still making me smile right now to think of it. And it was one of those, Steve Donovan is one of those guys, a lot like Martin Montana, a lot like Kevin Flynn, who I've recently met this year. There's a few of these guys out there who are just, maybe I'm one of these guys, I don't know, but it's like when I get around them, they crack me up, like with intentional jokes, making jokes. A lot of comedians don't do that anymore. They don't want to be on when they're not on, or they don't want to seem on when they're not on. And makes me laugh. I'm like, dude, I enjoy busting balls and having, one-upsmanship when it comes to creative thought and stuff. So I found it. Donovan's one of those guys. If I don't see him forever, I see him, he just like makes you laugh. Funny motherfucker. I like radio people. I always do. Radio people just know how to not be dull. That's like one of their best qualities. People on the radio know how to keep it moving and keep it interesting and not drone on and be uninteresting. And that's something a lot of regular people who aren't comics don't think about. And a lot of, I guess I could say, newer comedians, newer generation of comedians, they don't care as much necessarily sometimes about that aspect of it. It's interesting to say. I think that is a definite shift in. There's always been multiple ways to think about how you do comedy and doing comedy. There's always been a lot of different ways to. There's always been a lot of different ways. Is it for you? Is it for the audience? Is it a mix of those things? Is it your ego? Is it the writing? Is it the act? Is it your face? There's all kinds of. I think every comic could answer that question a little differently. I've said on this podcast a lot, and I still believe it to be true. I've said it a lot that I ultimately, at the end of the day, do this because I enjoy making people laugh in audiences. So I guess ultimately that is selfish because I enjoy doing that. So that's the part of the gig I probably enjoy the most. But there's a lot of comics out there, and there always have been, who would say, This is about me. These are my thoughts. I'm putting my thoughts into their head, and they don't really personalize audiences at all, and they see all audiences as this one kind of blanket sort of wall to just bounce things off of, and you either like the way the ball bounces back or you don't, and they're just constantly keeping score that way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach. Some of the best comics working today and working in the past are like that. There's nothing wrong with that approach, but I think there is another way though, and I feel more that way. Like, there's nothing that makes this job feel better than when you're killing. But it's, I guess, do you love killing because you just love that you're getting all these laughs, or do you love killing because when you look out at a crowd and everyone's fucking smiling because of you, it feels so good? So I've always kind of felt that way about doing stand-up, but I don't know. I don't know what the fucking whole point of this was, but doing it for all types of people, handicapped, non-handicapped. It's always fun. I saw a thing on the internet with Robin Williams when he was alive, and obviously it was not a corpse video of Robin Williams, but when Robin Williams was younger and alive, he was friends with someone. Brought him to hang out with Coco the gorilla, and Robin Williams interacted with the gorilla, and this isn't really something they would usually even allow, I guess, with the gorilla, to have celebrities come in there. They did it sometimes, but it wasn't like something they really loved to do. But apparently the story goes the gorilla was kind of upset and depressed, and Robin Williams got in there, and he wanted to just meet this incredible thing. He was curious about it. Obviously, a good-hearted guy wanted to be around this interesting animal. Probably had his own reasons, right? But anyway, he gets in there, and the two of them, Robin Williams and this gorilla, they had an instant rapport. He's getting laughs out of the gorilla. He's obviously not speaking English. He's not using he is speaking, but he's not using topical references to get this gorilla to laugh. He's just using his bare communication of body language, his eyes, his essence, his whole Robin Williamness worked with a gorilla. Another story I like is of Zach Galifianakis filming Hangover 2. They were all in China, and they're filming, and they have all these extras in the boat. They're like 90-year-old Chinese guys or Thai guys, and they're on the boat with them, and they don't speak any fucking English at all, and Zach Galifianakis is still getting big laughs out of them with his hands and with his face just being funny. Now, I take that as like, when things like that happen to me, I take it like it just makes my month when a baby or someone who doesn't speak English laughs at something I do. It's kind of like it just feels like a high level win. Like, it's like, all right, I was just funny just without even using language. That's how hard. That's how funny I can be. I can tap funniness without language. I know that sounds like amazingly pretentious, but if you think about it, as the joy from that comes from seeing the smile on the baby's face, or finding out that someone who doesn't speak English thinks you're funny, and seeing it is like you made a face go from completely like placid and nothing to joy and humor. So I think that's something special, man. That's something special that comedians do. I think if you can always take joy in having a good bit and having people laugh at it, and you can always take pride in that fact. But I do think if you don't know how you feel and you feel like you could choose one way or the other, I would choose doing it for crowds, because I think in the long run, that's what's going to keep you doing it every single night and getting out there for years and years and years doing stand-up. If you're doing it only for yourself and for your own ego, you're eventually going to fucking grow up and grow out of that probably. And that won't be as important to you. Maybe then, thus, stand-up won't be as important to you, or going out there won't be that important to you. It's like, just learn to enjoy all aspects of it, maybe. Who fucking knows? Who am I telling you how to live your fucking life, huh? Anyway, this is the part of the show where I'm going to take a break and smoke weed and do the second half of the show. That's how I'm deciding to do hypothetically these days. So, I'm ripping up Route 24 right now. I'm going to smoke a little bit of weed. I'm going to finish this up. And we're back. We're back. We're fucking back. We're back. We're back. We're motherfucking back. And I just smoked a bunch of weed. And it's been a few hours since I smoked any weed, so I'm feeling fucking good. Yeah, I'm feeling fucking good. Okay. So, second half. I wanted to talk a little bit. Some people have been asking me a lot lately about acting work and acting, and some people didn't know I was an actor at all, which is kind of funny, I think, and what the whole little story is with all that. So I guess I'll give y'all a quick rundown of my whole acting thing. If anyone doesn't know, started when I was a kid. Really wanted to be an actor since I was a little kid. I don't think I started saying that's what I wanted it to be. I used to tell people I wanted to be Bill Murray when I was almost as young as I can remember, 4, 5, 6 years old. Once the movie Ghostbusters came out, I said I wanted to be Bill Murray. And then someone was like, well, he's an actor and a comedian and all these things. So I was like, all right, I want to do what that is. Then, I had some dalliances after that with astronaut, doctor, Supreme Court justice, of all pro sports. Really wanted to be a pro athlete. Then acting would be no problem then. So I could just be like Michael Jordan and act and be a pro athlete. But those are many dreams. But then as soon as I got to like as soon as I left. So when I was in 6th grade, I was in public school, Milton Public Schools, and I was starting to hang out with somewhat unseemly dudes. Looking back, though, I think everyone in my family was a little bit too worried. But then again, if you also look at this time, it was like the heroin boom was starting, and I think my parents didn't know who the fuck I was hanging out with, so they didn't know if I was getting into that kind of drug stuff or whether I was just, because I was into punk music and skateboarding and stuff, and really just was. I didn't do any drugs, but I think maybe they thought that's what I was getting into, because the whole long story, I had these cousins, they were doing shit, and I was getting in all this attention because of what my family members were doing. And anyway, my parents were basically like, you're going to Catholic school whether you want to or not. I did not want to go. So I get sent to this Catholic school. I fucking hate it. It's a piece of shit school. Everyone's a dickhead. It's a bunch of fucking, coaches who are teaching during the day so they can coach sports. And none of them give a fuck about teaching. And it's just a bullshit, like, good old boy fucking institution. So it's just there to generate money and kill time and create athletes. So I'm there, and it's like, it's hell. And within a year, I'm pretty down and in a dark depression for like whatever that means to a 7th or 8th grader. But I'm fucking just a loner of a kid, not talking to anyone, not cutting his hair. I was that kid in 7th grade at this Catholic school. I had one friend. He was kind of like another punk rock, only other kid in the school who liked punk music. And I just felt like I was the only artist, one of like two or three artistic kids. Even though I still played hockey and played a couple sports, I was one of the only artistic kids in this whole fucking thing. So I was pretty down and just wanted to be back home with my friends and not doing this shit. I was pretty miserable. And this, I remember I had this teacher who was a female acting teacher, and then she got pregnant, and her husband filled in for her when she had the baby, and went out. So it was kind of funny. He was also an actor, so he took over her shifts or something. And anyway, he was a great guy, and he really took like a liking to me. He taught like the drama class that you had to take or whatever, and I guess I was good at it. I know I'm not telling the story so great, but long story short, Rushmore, the movie, was doing a national talent search, and they were sending casting agents around and using local casting agents, all that shit, to look for kids for the movie. So they had a audition at our school, and my director, or my like drama school teacher, was like, you should audition for this, man. You're a funny kid. You're funny in drama class. And I was kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't do anything. I have no friends. I'm sad, sulking fucking teenager. And he was like, no, you should do this. You're good at acting. That was really the first time someone had ever done anything like that. So I was like, okay. So then this guy's name was Steve Rogers. He really changed my life. I think he saw a struggling kid and, did exactly what a teacher's supposed to do and got me into something. And I was into it, and I got from there it was on. I didn't get any parts in Rushmore or anything like that, but I think it gave me the idea of like, okay, so this is how it works. You audition for stuff, you do school plays, you get good, da-da-da. So then I started doing school plays. Then the school plays have to have girls in them, so now you're hanging out with girls from the all-girls Catholic school after school doing plays. Life is getting a little bit better, but mainly I was just enjoying acting a lot, and that became... So somewhere around 13, 14, I started doing school plays, and I was like, that's it. I want to be an actor. So that was that. And then that never changed until So after a couple years of 2 or 3 more years of being in that Catholic school, still doing good in the plays and stuff, but I was still a pretty miserable prick. And my parents were like, do you want to leave? And I was like, yes. I think my dad was a big part of that. He was like, why are we paying for this shit the kid hates? And da-da-da. So I went back to public school, but with this... immediately joined the drama club, and not to toot my own horn, but got the leads and all the plays, won a bunch of fucking acting awards, Boston Globe youth acting awards, and we went to the state finals, and then from there I went to college in New York. I went to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. I got in fucking a month into my senior year, or a month or two into my senior year. Early acceptance, didn't have to fucking worry. Went there, early acceptance, early start. Started that school in July 2001. Had 2 months in New York City before September 11th, which happened while I was in class. A mile and a half away from where I was, maybe 2 miles. And then after that, just did a couple plays, struggled doing student films, indie films, nothing ever good, a bunch of bad plays. Then I didn't do really anything at all for 2 or 3 years. Moved to LA, moved back, just shit was not happening. And then started doing stand-up comedy. Got this job hosting karaoke, started doing stand-up comedy. And then after 3 years of doing stand-up comedy, quit drinking, moved back to Boston. And within 6 months of that, I got the best acting gig I'd ever had, which was... So I started auditioning again once I moved back up to Boston. I got an audition for a sports show called The Lineup, which was a weekly... internet show, and I did that, and then that got me back into acting. And then I did a commercial in October 2012, I think, 2012. I did my first commercial, and I've done 20 something since then. And So that's kind of an abbreviated, and that brings us, to like, I don't know, like somewhere around, after doing stand-up around 7 to 8 years, I could pay rent with it, pay my bills with it, move out of my parents. I moved back into my parents in there, lived with a chick for a little. It was all kinds of stuff. So, been full-time for a long time now, though. And my only job before this, not my only job, I had 1,000 jobs. But my most recent job that wasn't comedy or acting was a karaoke DJ in Manhattan, which was very difficult and a lot of work, but was also not much of a job. It was a lot of getting shit-faced and a lot of fun. So it's been a solid. Let me tell you the last time I worked. I'm not going to count this little weird thing I did like 6 years ago. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. This weird thing with a kiosk that was sort of like an acting. It was like a comedy gig disguised. It was just a real gig disguised as a comedy gig. But I kind of fucked up on that too, so that didn't really count. I'm trying to think. The last like job I had was being a waiter and very occasional bartender, but mainly just a waiter. And towards the end, I was bartending a little bit during the daytimes, where I did get some very interesting experience, but even that was a lot of fun. So it's been a lot. I really don't know what it's like to work in an office. I worked at a gym for famous people. But anyway, I've been kind of telling this story to a lot of young guns getting into the business. I'm lucky enough now. I'm somewhat successful, especially in the Boston area. I'm somewhat successful, so I get a lot of like, can you talk to my nephew? Can you talk to my son or daughter? And I'm always happy to, but it's like always the same thing where it's tough. I'm sitting there telling them shit they want that people told me that I didn't even really understand until it was already that I basically had learned. Until I didn't even understand the shit people were telling me until I'd already learned it on my own. Woo! Real Billy Badass on a motorcycle just went by me. There's another one. I can't see these guys coming, dude. They're gonna die out here. You're gonna die out here. But it's hard. I remember people telling me at the beginning, like, it's going to be a lot of work, and you just have to work hard, and it's going to take a lot of time, and you're going to be starving for a long time. And I just remember thinking, man, all these people do is focus on the negative, which I do try not to do. I do think I still kind of agree with my past self a little bit. Like, people were too fucking negative, They should also be telling you, like, hey, just remember, be friendly. Like, a good piece of advice is to always be friendly and always be cool, and to not go around making enemies or thinking who's gonna make it and who's not gonna make it. Don't think to yourself, oh, that fucking guy, he'll never do anything. I'm gonna be an asshole to him, because you just never know, man. And I'm not even saying that's to, oh, you might want to call them for a favor one day, because even that is a stretch. But you also don't want them to be just fucking you. When it comes down to it, being cool or being a dickhead, it pays off in conversations that you don't even know happen. It's like back room behind closed doors when someone's like, what about this guy? Is he a good guy, bad guy? Should we put him on the show? Should we not put him on the show? And that's the moment where how you are pays off or doesn't. It's where they either go, yeah, fucking, he's a fun dude, like, always a nice guy, put him on, yeah, he's good, or, that guy was a fucking dick to me when we were open micers, fuck him. I see it happen all the time. I see it happen all the motherfucking time, and I even have a couple of those grudges myself. I have, like, reverse grudges, too, though, where I remember who was great to me and who's always been cool with me. And you remember that just as much. People remember, man. If that would be a big piece of advice I would give a young actor or comedian out there. It would be like, just remember that people remember. Be one of those people and remember what I just motherfucking said, motherfucker. But one of the things I tell people, which is just the truth, is that it's most likely gonna take a long time. And that's a tough one to tell someone, because they don't want to hear that. No one wants to hear that. Because sometimes it doesn't. Ashton Kutcher, a bunch of famous people, you know, young people in movies and TV got to come from somewhere. So every time you see one, you're like, that could be me. But the truth is, even they probably started as children and have 7 years in the business. So it's kind of a blunt reality, is that no one really wants you on set if you don't know what's going on. No one wants to teach you on the job. They want you to somehow know before you get there. And it's a tough thing to do, and especially right now, the current era, you kind of have to be successful for anyone to even want to work with you. It's a fucking weird time. So there's a lot of the stuff. The funny thing about how rapidly acting and comedy changes now is that after 10 years, your advice isn't even any good anymore. It's like a lot of stuff people told me I was like, yeah, dude, that won't work anymore when they told me. And a lot of stuff I tell people, they're probably thinking the same thing. So it's like the fundamental stuff of just don't be a fucking prick is always good. But a lot of people lately have been asking me how to get acting work. So here is like a fucking blueprint in a real practical terms, not find a place in your soul. So here's what you do. You gotta look up. So let's just say you're starting from ground zero, not the one in New York, but just you're starting from zero. A non-terrorist zero, right? And so you don't have any pictures of yourself. You don't have any resume, nothing, right? So here's what you do. You go to you have to find out who casts television and who casts commercials in your area. If you live in a big city like Boston or New York or LA or Chicago, you probably have a lot of different options here. You probably have maybe 8, 9, 10 options in New York. Way more probably. In Boston, you might have 7, 6, 7. And even in Boston, maybe less than that, 4 or 5 big ones, right? So, but if you live somewhere else, there's always people who do it. You know, one of the ways to figure this out is you follow the trail. You know, you look at companies. Let's say Cumberland Farms. You look at their website, you find out who does their marketing. You look at the company, you go to their website, you see who else they do ads for, and then you see who casts. The credits are there. Find casting directors. If you see the same name twice, that's someone who casts a lot of shit in your area. So number one thing you need to do is get in contact with your local casting director or casting agent. If you're a brand new person from the street and you don't know a soul, this is what you need to do. Now, there's a few different ways you can do this. You can just cold call it. You can call them up. You can say, hey, I'm looking to audition for some stuff. You could stop by the office. Yeah, a lot of places have, they'll just want to take a photo of you, fill out a little card, and then you'll come in if they have anything for you. And that isn't a go fuck yourself. A lot of times it feels like a go fuck yourself when they say, yeah, we'll call you if anything comes up for you. But that's really kind of true, because casting agencies they really are trying to build a database of all types of people. So if you're fucking 300 pounds, or you're got a gigantic beard, or you fucking weigh 100 pounds soaking wet, if you're weird looking, they still want you. They want everybody. You don't have to look like a movie star to get acting work, right? So don't think, oh, they're blowing me off or they don't want me. Like they do. And A lot of dudes who look like construction workers fucking work constantly. So they're happy to see you. Now, a piece of advice I would give, try and find it online. Try and find ways to do this easily. Try and find ways to do this without bothering the casting director in their day-to-day life. Always try and make people's lives easier. They'll want to work with you. That's a key of life, right? So contact them all by email, and you just be polite. Say, hey, I'd love to come, start doing auditions. That's one way. Another way, is to go in for open calls, right? They have big time. Sometimes a casting agency will have a big open call for extras for a movie that's shooting in the area, right? You go in, you audition. Now they've seen you. If you're a funny person, they might ask you to come back, but either way, you now know who they are, and you can get in their book, in their database, right? Another way is a lot of these casting agencies offer classes. Now, this sounds a little bit shitty, and it sounds a little bit kind of like a scam, but unfortunately, this is how things work. Just like an improv, you take an improv class, you might make it on the improv team. In a casting agency, if you take the casting agency's acting class, you'll probably get more auditions from that casting agency, simply because of the fact that you're fresher in their mind. The casting agents often teach those classes themselves. You're just favored now. You're just around the office more. You're just in a favored position. I know a lot of guys and gals who started out taking those classes did very well for themselves in voiceover and commercial acting work and stuff. So normally, I would tell you, don't spend a lot of money. Don't pay for a lot of subscription services or pay some photographer a shitload of money. Normally, I would say that. Don't blow a ton of money trying to get famous or get big in this business. Like, put the money into your career. But this is a case where I would say, do it, especially if you're brand new and you don't have any skills. You probably could use these classes. If they have a class on how to audition, I'd recommend taking that one. It'll get you in with the casting agencies. That's a great way to get in with casting agencies. But if you don't want to take a class, I understand. You can do it the old-fashioned way, and especially now with digital cameras and filters and stuff, you can get a pretty good picture of yourself. Get your friend with an iPhone X and fucking take some good pics of yourself. Or even if you have some already real... I used a picture from Facebook that someone took of me at a comedy show for like 2 years to get a shitload of commercials. So that's a big thing. If you're a comedian or an improviser or even a bunch of high school plays... all right, not if you're in a bunch of high school plays. But if you're a comedian or an improviser, lean on that. Tell them that a lot. Write that down several times a lot of times in your sheet or whatever, it'll be like special skills. Do you have any skills? They mean like, are you a musician? Can you play guitar? Are you funny? All that shit, right? So that's what you put there. But if you're a comedian or improviser, lean on that when you sign up for these casting agencies, auditions and stuff, because they really, really, really love that, because that way when they're filming these things, now they got somebody who not only just does the lines as they're told, but can also bring something creative to the table, maybe even make this thing better. I do think that has something to do with why I've gotten so many commercials, because I'm a comedian and improvise. I write comedy so I can come up with funny shit on the spot. I don't know. I don't really do that with these Honda ones at all, but in the past I have done that a lot. So I guess that's a big part of it. I mean, auditioning, that's a whole nother thing. I've been doing that since I was 13, 14 years old, and I must have done it 60 trillion times. I definitely do not think twice about it. Does not make me sweat, to be in an audition anymore. I actually think theater is so much worse than TV and film. Your TV and film auditions happen in a little tiny office with you and one other or two other people and a camera most of the time, first round. when you're doing the theater, you're like in this big ass empty theater on this big stage, and a couple people are just silently judging you, and it feels like you should be getting like applause. At least in the office, you're like, yeah, no one's gonna clap for me in here, but in a theater, it's twice as bad. Sorry. People are just so fucking bad at driving in Boston. We gotta be the worst. How many of you? I'm doing a fucking podcast, and I'm high, and I'm still better at driving than fucking 85% of the people out here right now. What in the fuck? It's constant. We are in a constant 24-hour traffic jam in Boston. It never ends. Never. Every 24 hours a day, if you go out, you're going to sit in a little traffic somewhere. It drives me nuts. Drives me fucking bananas, listeners. I actually fantasize now. I'm like, maybe I'll just move to a bumfuck place where nothing happens just so I don't have to sit in this shit anymore. That's so insulting to like 90% of the earth. Okay. Namaste. Take a deep breath. But yeah, well, that's the question I get a lot these days. So that's kind of it, man. It's a lot like stand-up or other things, or it's like you start super fucking slow and you piece it in, and you go do what you can. Speaking of starting things off slow, I think the Noonan Show with me and Paul is coming into like a little bit of a new era. We're like 23 episodes in now, and we're starting to get a nice flow, and the show looks great, and we got nice video sync and audio sync, and quality is improving, and we're getting some bits and some more regular viewer, and everything's going good. So don't forget to check us out over at the Noonan Show on YouTube, youtube.com/Will Noonan, and also on Twitter, The Noonan Show. And you can download that in podcast form, just like this, just like Hypothetically, on all the same places: iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, all those places. And that's been once a week for like months and months. We have not missed 1 week, I don't think. And it's doing pretty good, but we could always be doing better, and I think the show's coming together real well. Paul, the biggest thing Paul's done a lot. I mean, Paul's the whole show. He sets up all that audio, sets up all that video. He has set up all of the fucking ways that it broadcasts. He's a co-host on the show. He does 99.9% of the research that goes into the show. And on top of all that, he kind of curates the YouTube channel and creates these great clips from the show. So if you don't want to sift through an hour of the Noonan Show and try and figure out what's funny and what's not funny, Paul's got all these 1-minute clips to 5-minute clips of our best moments. He's constantly making the best ofs. I think that's like, those are starting to do really well, and I think that's what's going to save us from total obscurity. And they're great. I enjoy watching them myself, even though I was there for most of them and I completely remember how they happened. I still get a chuckle out of watching these little clips. So I urge you and implore you to go to youtube.com/Will Noonan and watch the Noonan Show clip playlist. Paul is so dutifully put together. And once again, in front of me, hundreds of people hit their brakes for absolutely no reason. Fucking cunts. I'm going down to, speaking of using the C word, I'm going to go hang out with Kevin Brennan and Anthony Cumia. I don't think anyone's ever done that, nor should they. What's that guy on Sopranos? Cusimano, Dr. Cusimano. Hey, Cus. Yeah, it's got that other connotation. That was one of my favorite sort of parts of The Sopranos, was the constant, he would rub elbows with legit people like doctors, and they were Italian Americans, and as much as they hated Tony, they wanted to be friends with him too, because he was so like cool and kind of a mysterious badass. And you know, as much as a lot of Italian Americans say they hate the mafia, they secretly love the mafia because they're so cool and clandestine and fucking, you know, it's just cool. Godfather's fucking cool. I'm big into espionage right now. That's kind of my new reading, movie watching kind of thing. Kind of with the end of the Marvel, and with that Marvel Endgame movie, I was like, all right, it's kind of time to transition into something other than superheroes. It's been almost 2 or 3 years where I've been really reading a lot of comics, watching a lot of comic movies. About 2 years. Hey, I obviously have a lot of varied interests, guys. Don't you worry. I got so many interests up in here. I'm fucking got interests coming out my fucking nose, right? But it's always good to spice it up. And I was like watching John Wick, and I was like, you know, I'm kind of getting into this whole assassin thing again. And not again, I've never been into it the first time, but I was like, I'm looking for... I started watching some stuff on spies on YouTube, old Cold War spies and the shit they did, and then I watched an imitation game about the Enigma machine. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of getting into this spy shit. I was thinking comedians would make good spies. I'd be a fucking spy. I always thought, I know I've said this a lot. Oh, come on! Another fucking drunk fuckhead in front of me. I was talking to a friend of mine about I'd like to play a cop sometime soon. A friend of mine who works in the film business, he was like, what's a project you'd like to do? I was like, I'd like to fucking play a cop sometime, man. I think it would be cool to play one. I think I kind of look like one. My dad was a cop. I watch a lot of as much as I'm into the spy stuff, I'm into it for real though too. I like to watch interrogations. Like I like to watch police interrogation videos on YouTube. Body language experts and interrogation experts have made all these videos on YouTube, and they explain what's happening while it's happening. They're like, oh, this is called ego building, and this is called blah, blah, blah. I find it so fascinating. Find it so, fascinating. I don't really like that word, to be honest. Fascinating is a word dumb people often use to just basically describe any interest of theirs that's a creative dalliance or some kind of not serious. It's basically a way of patting yourself on the back with your own language. Like, I'm fascinated by that. Like, I'm so interested in that from so many angles. I'm interested in that the way a genius is interested in something. It fascinates me. Whenever I hear people use that word, I'm always like, are you trying to let me know that you're into cool shit? So yes, I guess that's kind of what I'm doing when I say, it's like when a guy's like, oh, I play chess. It's like, we get what you're trying to say. But yeah, I'm into these interrogation videos and the body language, and not just in this, oh, I'm a comedian, it's kind of like what I do is I look at, but I'm interested in it in that way, but I'm also interested in the way that I think that could have been a calling for me. I've said it 1,000 times. I know you're probably sick of hearing me say it, but I really think that could have been a calling for me. I could have been a great, I'm not saying I would have been the greatest cop in the world or greatest detective in the world as far as all other aspects of the job. Sitting in the car, like fucking arresting people, all that shit. Even looking for clues and piecing those together. I'm not saying I'd be the best person at that. I'm not saying I'd be like some genius Dr. House level detective solving. He was a doctor, but I mean, he solved medical crimes, mysteries of the human body. I'm not saying I'd be like Matlock or Columbo, but I think I could be a great interrogator, and I think I would be great at getting people to admit things to me. Admit that they were guilty. Another fucking drunk fuck driving 60 miles per hour on a 25 mile per hour fucking street called L Street. Because he's an Uber and he's waiting for someone to fucking ping him. Smoking a fucking cigarette. Dude, I'm glad you're having such a relaxing drive right now. Some of us want to go home and smoke some fucking pot and relax our way. So why don't you get your fucking Uber out of my fucking way, you piece of fucking useless garbage. Okay, sorry, just got away from that guy. I'm fascinated by Ubers. Alright, I've reached home. Probably not a full hour this week, but hey, the drive was barely an hour long. Go Red Sox! Go Bruins! Really need your thoughts and prayers for the Boston Bruins to win the Stanley Cup. Top secret, but something really cool could happen for me if the Bruins win the Stanley Cup. So, need those thoughts, need those prayers, need the T's and P's. Need the T's and P's, y'all. Full strength T's and P's. Pump them out, hound it. Alright, guys. Remember, check my calendar. Come see me, South Shore Music Circus, Cape Cod Melody Tent, selling like crazy. I would love to have the most people there. There's a shitload of awesome comics on that show, but I would love the Noonan people to be cheering the loudest when I walk out there. That'd be something else. That'd be something cool. That would show this whole motherfucking Cape Cod who's boss. Am I right? I was just kidding about that last part. But thank you guys for listening to this silly podcast. I love each and every one of you. I hope you got some good acting work advice. I hope you can apply any of that. But if not, hit me up at my email, willnoonanComedy@gmail.com, or you can contact me through my website. Peace out, everybody. I gotta go. I gotta get up and bowl in the morning. Remember, no one told you they love you today. I do. Peace out! Test. Testing. Uno, dos, tres. Testing. Uno, dos, tres. Booyaka. 619. Booyaka. That's my play blow. Oh, I went the wrong fucking way. Oh, fuck. The wrong fucking way again. Good morning. Good morning. I am lost. Hold on. I am in the middle of a bad place. Trying to record a fucking podcast. Shut the fuck up, Waze. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time it is where you are. Fuck you, Waze. Shut the fuck up.